Honorable Member Srimati T. Sumadhi.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, to have a discussion on this, for having allowed me to have a discussion on this bill on epidemic diseases amendment bill. Noam Chomsky, the celebrated linguist and activist, has recently warned, we are at an astonishing confluence of very severe crises. He enlisted 3 such crises. The growing threat of nuclear war, which is probably more severe than it was during the Cold War, the growing threat of environmental catastrophe, and the third thing that they have been picking up for the last few years is a sharp deterioration of democracy. Sir, in this pandemic, the latter two have reached its worst from worse. In India, this has been further propelled and geared up by the catastrophic loss to environment like the EIA 2020, anti-democratic, anti-federal laws like CAA, NRC, and more recently the NEP. The world has seen so many pandemics and epidemics, sir, from the bubonic plague in the 1300s to the Spanish flu in the 1900s and SARS epidemic. And in all these plagues, the leaders came out to the streets together to guide their people and not to pass draconian ordinances and amendments in the empty bowls of the poor people. Only this government does it. Sir, before plunging into the discussion on this bill, I would like to state how unprepared India is to combat this crisis. The COVID-19 crisis could have been handled well in India if the action packages of the global health security agenda started in 2014, of which India is a participant, had been implemented effectively. Also, we lost the golden hours of prevention when the government, the Prime Minister, was busy hosting Trump. Sir, our ancient point, Thiruvalluvar has rightly remarked, Varumunnar kavadan valkai erimunnar vaithuru pola kedum, meaning the prosperity of him who does not timely guard against the falls will perish like the straw before the fire. In brief, prevention is better than cure, but the government didn't take the cue and had lost so many battlegrounds. Despite receiving grants from the US Center for Disease Control, India is yet to fill the gaps to combat the present crisis. Amidst this raging pandemic, when the nation is under severe social economic crisis, with 122 million Indians losing their jobs in April alone, the BJP government has prioritized passing ordinances and amendments. Sir, this amendment is promulgated at a time when crores of our students were pleading the government to delay NEET. Sir, back home in Tamil Nadu, we have lost so many lives for this draconian NEET examination. Sir, Dr. Johnson, a famous English literary person, when he declared that he would compile an English dictionary within 3 years, all alone, all critics wondered, how can you do it when 40 Frenchmen took 40 years to compile a dictionary? How would you do it within 3 years? He replied, an Englishman is equivalent to 40 Frenchmen. An Indian medical student, Indian doctor is equivalent to 40 European doctors, but you have severed their progress by bringing this NEET examination. That's why our party leader, Mr. M.K. Stalin, vehemently opposes it. And when Dr. Kalaignar was the chief minister, irrespective of this entrance exams, the board examinations were taken into account, and that's how even now the US has been discussing whether standardized tests like the SAT should be used at all in the deciding administrations. Now coming into this bill, sir, just 2 minutes, sir. Coming into this bill, my faith only lies in the will of the Indian people. The amendment bill under class 1A clearly states the violence or damage is to be during an academic. So what will happen if the academic ends? Sir, the life of the frontline warriors as well as the nurses, police personnel has to be ensured even after the endemic. And there are a few lacunas, sir. Epidemic Act 1897 is silent on the definition of dangerous epidemic diseases. So, now, since it is a colonial act, issues like restricting international travel, especially the use of air travel relating to sea travel, increased migration, higher density, all these areas remain still a gray area, and the bill has to specifically clarify the act, whether it is too ship-oriented and quiet on air travel. Sir, 1 minute, I'm the only speaker. Yes. Sir, again, there is no classification of these words, lethal or infectious or contagious diseases. It has to be clearly stated. There are no stages, no differentiation, nothing. It has been left to the whims and fancy of the government. And one more thing, sir, regarding the vaccination, the act and the bill both fail to mention the priority for vaccination against COVID. Whether the government has any standards to decide which state, districts or individuals should get priority. Also, sir, to conclude, this has also surpassed the state rights, because state implementation of a central law is not possible, since the area of health, including protection of doctors, is a state subject, meaning only states have the power to frame and pass laws related to it. So this is also still a gray area. Sir, the conclusion, finally, sir, the last thing, a Chinese woman too, you earned the Nobel Prize in 2015 for her work in creating anti-malaria medicine using ancient Chinese remedies. Why not Indian doctors using the Indian medicines can get a vaccine for this COVID, and the government should concentrate in promoting research and encouraging them rather than feeding peacocks and lounging complacently on the acts of God. The government should realize that the purpose of the government is to enable the people.
Honorable Member Sri Kalyan Banerjee.
Sir,